Spiral of Life Productions presents a reading by author L.A. Marzulli from a portion of his book, Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural, The Coming Great Deception and the Luciferian Endgame, Chapter 7, Fallen Angels and Hybrid Offspring. Fallen Angels and Hybrid Offspring. Genesis 6 is an enigmatic chapter, as it portrays the previously referred event, which is so bizarre that most people skip over it, rather than coming to grips with what may be the most horrific chapter in the Bible. If what I and many others who have studied this text in detail believe is true, then this one event was the reason for the biblical deluge, or the flood of Noah, that wiped out every living thing except 8 people and an ark full of animals. Let's examine the text. When men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, and they married any of them they chose. Then the Lord said, My spirit will not contend with man forever, for he is mortal. His days will be 120 years. The Nephilim were on earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went into the daughters of men and had children by them. Genesis 6:1-4, NIV. This passage begs the question, who were the sons of God, and what or who were the Nephilim? Before attempting to answer these questions, it is necessary to examine a quote from the book of Enoch. For those of you who may not be familiar with this book, it is attributed to Enoch, but was penned by someone else, hence the term pseudepigraphical. The Bible actually quotes the book of Enoch in the books of Jude and 1 Peter. It is also alluded to in 1 Corinthians 11:10. The aforementioned quote from the book of Enoch is as follows: And it came to pass, when the children of men multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters, and the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose us wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. And Semyaza, who was their leader, said unto them, I fear ye will not indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have to pay the penalty of a great sin. And all the fallen angels answered and said, Let us swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations not to abandon this plan, but to do this thing. Then swear they all together, and bound themselves by a mutual oath. And they were in all 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. What is interesting in regards to this quote is that the book of Enoch amplifies the Genesis 6 account of angels coming down to earth to engage in sexual relations with the human daughters, and thus producing the Nephilim. This makes one wonder which book came first. While I do not consider the book of Enoch to be canon, that which is a definitive standard, I do think, for the purposes of our discussions, we can appreciate its historicity and its insights into the antediluvian world. That is, the world before the flood. The bottom line is that the Genesis and the Enochian accounts are relating to the same event. What the book of Enoch does is perhaps clarify and throw light on the reference in Genesis to the sons of God. This term, sons of God, has been debated for centuries, but I believe Enoch clarifies any uncertainty by explicitly stating that the sons of God are indeed angels, as the text states. The angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted. However, there are 2 schools of thought regarding the meaning of the term sons of God. Simply put, the sons of God are thought to be either angels, as I have just stated, or they are thought to be the descendants of the ungodly line of Cain. The Hebrew translation for sons of God is B'nai Elohim, which is used throughout the Old Testament in reference to angels. While nowhere does the Old Testament differentiate its terminology between the bad angels, the ones who fell with Satan in the rebellion, and the good ones, B'nai Elohim is always used in reference to angels and not to the ungodly line of Cain, sons of Adam. Granted, most people have trouble with the idea that fallen angels could somehow manifest and procreate with the women of earth. However, according to the account of both Genesis and the book of Enoch, this is precisely what happened, and the results were the Nephilim. The word Nephilim comes from the Hebrew word nephal, which means simply fallen one. The Nephilim were not fallen angels, but rather they were hybrids, part human, part angelic, fallen angels. The Nephilim, of course, were never supposed to be created, and in fact, this unholy union between the fallen angels of heaven and the women of earth resulted in the judgment of the Noahic flood. The following is a passage from the late Clarence Larkin. In his book, Rightly Dividing the Word, he states, as further confirmation of this view, angels cohabiting with the women of earth, we have the fact that the offspring of the union of the sons of God and the daughters of men were a race of giants, mighty men, men of renown, as spoken of in Genesis 6:4. Now, the bodily descendants of men have married ungodly women, but their offspring have never been such monstrosities as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men of Noah's day. Therefore, that union must have been of an unnatural character, as is evidenced by the term strange flesh. God could not permit such an abnormal race as the progeny of the union of angels and human beings to exist on the earth. So the outcome of this invasion of the earth by the denizens of the air was the flood, by which the contour and elevation of the antediluvian earth were changed, thus wiping out the Garden of Eden and diminishing the length of human life on earth. Furthermore, an interesting quote that most Bible scholars attribute as coming from the book of Enoch can be found in this short book of Jude, which precedes the book of Revelation in the Bible. Here's the quote from it. And the angels who did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their own home, these he has kept in darkness, bound with everlasting chains. Jude 1:6. Thus, we have a reference to the angels, not the ungodly sons of Cain, not keeping their positions of authority. And in what manner did these angels fail? As Genesis 6:1-4 alludes to, these angels fell by going to earth and cohabiting with the women, resulting in the demonic hybrid known as the Nephilim. Finally, 1 Corinthians states, for this reason and because of the angels, the woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head. It seems that Paul here is referring back to Genesis. Remember, in Genesis it states that the sons of God saw the daughters of men. This visual contact is what tempted the fallen angels and started the crossbreeding between them and the women of earth. In short, the fallen angels lusted after the daughters of men. Stay tuned for part 2, Fallen Angels and the Nephilim, the specifics. If you're interested in finding more about politics, prophecy, and the supernatural, please go to www.spiraloflife.com, where my daily blog is lamarzulli.wordpress.com.